All right, let's go ahead and get started. I have initialized the recording. This is one of the classes that I like to teach as soon as possible during the school year because it saves me a lot of trouble. Every single school semester, I always end up with a rash of plagiarism issues, and kiddos thinking they're going to get away with outright stealing. So I'm going to discuss the topic and talk about ways to avoid it. Most of you have participated in the plagiarism discussion, so you're very clear on what it is. But I really enjoy this class because I love calling out kiddos because I've got some examples that I'm going to show you and then little stories I'm going to share. Absolutely none of these kiddos are even, some of these kiddos have even graduated high school. So they're not even in GAVs anymore. So don't feel like you're going to see something that you did yourself. That's not going to happen. And to the one kiddo that is here present, I am going to talk like there is more than one of you because people are watching this recording later. So if I just say you all or all you kiddos, I'm talking to the people that watch the recording in the future, not just the one of you. All righty. Let's define plagiarism for the beginning part. Plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. Literally, what kiddos do is copy and paste sentences, sometimes paragraphs, sometimes the whole essay into their document and turn it in. It's infringement of copyright, it's piracy, it's theft, it's stealing, it's copying. Um, it's literally the stealing of someone else's thoughts, someone else's hard work. Okay, so what I wanted you to notice is that the word plagiarism in its origin comes from the Latin word for kidnapping. Comes from the Latin word for kidnapping. Use the laser pointer here. Um, this is significant because kidnapping is extremely significant. So I'm in no way implying that stealing someone else's work is the same as stealing a kid. Obviously, one of the worst things that you could steal is another human being. I'm going to say the worst thing that you could steal is another human being. But not quite as serious, but still very serious, as stealing someone else's work. All right, these are all ways that you can plagiarize. Turning in someone else's work as your own. This can be done in more than one way, either by working together with someone else and then turning in the assignment with only your name on it. I have had that done. Or going and getting an essay off the internet from one of those awful sites and submitting it as your own. And I've had that happen as well. Copying words or ideas from someone else without giving credit, failing to put a quotation in quotation marks. This one is probably the one that happens maybe accidentally, like you to get a quote and you don't put it in quotation marks, but just because you forgot. Of course, that would be considered accidental, but I can usually tell. Usually, an accident like that would only happen once in an essay. It's like, oh, hey, you forgot your quotation marks over here. But if it happened 3 times in an essay, that would not be an accident anymore. That would be on purpose. So that would be a situation where you would be potentially claiming someone else's work as your own. 1 second. I don't see this happen very often, but giving incorrect information about the source of a quotation, making sure that you get the citation right for a quote would be important. That's not something I see very often, or even the purpose of I see of doing that. Um, some kiddos ask me, "Hey, can I use this, but just change some of the words?" Technically, no. If you don't change enough of it, you're still copying the essence and the feeling and spirit of that quote. In order to avoid that, I always suggest kiddos read the paragraph, read the text, whatever it is, process it in your mind, understand it, and then put it in your own words. Your understanding of that text. Either that or use a proper quote. Copying so many words or ideas from a source that it makes up the majority of your work, whether you give credit or not. All right. This is less of an issue if you're using proper quotations and proper citations. However, if it's above a certain amount, I would still call you out on it and mark your essay down because you are relying more on another source than you are on your own writing. It pretty much, if you're anywhere above like the 20% mark, I would raise a little bit of a red flag, but especially if you're above the 30 or 40% mark in your essay of words that are not your own, even if if you have properly cited them, means that you really haven't done much analyzing. You really haven't done much interpretation. You are simply letting the text speak, and that's not an analytical essay. And I would mark you down for not a strong enough author's voice, meaning your voice. These are some of the other ways that you could, according to Gavs, um, participate in academic dishonesty. Cheating, intentionally using or attempting to use unauthorized material, assistance, or study aids in any academic work. The use of online translators. This isn't a language class. Unless you're cheating includes copying another student's work and submitting it as your own or sharing your work with another student. Be sure you get your teacher's permission before working with a classmate on an assignment. I'm going to be very clear about this, very much up front. There are no assignments in American literature, with the exception of discussions that you are supposed to work with another student. None. And the only reason I say with the exception of discussions is you are intended to have conversations in your discussions. Not that you're getting together with another friend and writing all your discussion posts together just because they're in the same class, but that you have conversations in your discussions. That's the point of them. There are no assignments that are meant to be worked on together. I did have a pair of girls a couple years back. It was a long time ago. It was like 4 years ago. Attempt to work together on assignments and submit them each with their own names on them. Despite the fact that they had two different teachers, Turnitin still caught it, and we were able to pretty quickly figure out that one of the girls had been doing almost all, if not most, of the work, and the other girl was using it and turning it in. So the girl in my class was the one that got into major trouble. Both of them were in trouble. Both of them were an issue, but the one that was in my class that was taking the work and submitting it as her own was in a lot more trouble. We watched her very closely for the rest of the semester, and we had a very serious conversation. Falsification or misinterpretation of data to include submitting documents, records, or assessments that is falsified, invented, or contains fictitious data, results, or resources. That's more about lab reports. That would be relating to that. Lying, plagiarism, of course, alteration of materials, and forgery. These are all forms of academic dishonesty. Plagiarism isn't the only form of academic dishonesty. For example, like, clicking back and forth between the module and the test, that would be very much straight up cheating. That would be cheating. Yeah, don't do that. In a sense, turning in your work from another semester is also cheating. I have had students that have attempted to turn in work, from the last time they took the course when they failed, or maybe they had a paper they wrote for another class that was similar enough and they turned it in for mine. Turn it in will usually catch that as well. And there are other ways that I can use to catch those kind of mistakes, those kind of attempts, so that it doesn't work. You are supposed to create fresh, new material every semester. Taking a test for somebody else, using or providing external assistance on a test or quiz or daily assignment. I had a parent once completing work for their student. Yeah, that was dumb. I was pretty sure about it. I'm pretty sure I reported it too. That was a long time ago. Ooh. But that is a form of cheating by using somebody else's password. Submitting your own work from another course or previous semester, presenting it as your work is completed for the current course. Failure to secure and protect documents that become shared with other students. Okay, so if you don't protect your documents, you could be your honesty could be called into question. Of course, not as much as the one that steals it if it's an accident, of course, that you left it out. Um, but I want to go over all of this. I know a lot of this isn't even relevant to this course, but it's always good to be reminded of what academic honesty looks like, because this is all in the GAVS handbook, the student handbook. You signed the handbook acknowledgement form at the beginning of the semester. All these policies are given there as well. All right, so a lot of students ask, how did you know? Well, let's take a look. At Georgia Virtual School, we use Turnitin. Sometimes it shows up as Feedback Studio on your side. We do make those reports available for you to check as well. And like I said, pretty much it's if it's shows as green, that usually means you're in the clear. You've got an appropriate amount of quotes that are properly cited, that kind of thing. Blue means pay attention. And then colors like yellow, orange, red, I can't remember exactly what the order is, usually indicates that there's either too much that's quoted in this essay, or it's possible it's got some serious plagiarism in it. Turnitin allows us to see if a student copy and pasted from virtually any site on the internet. Like, you would be surprised what the kind of sites that Turnitin looks at, and to find out where a student copied them from. So the thing is, sometimes the first listed source isn't the source the student used, but it has the same content as the source the same content as the source the student used. This is because, lo and behold, websites plagiarize too. And what that means is that there could be multiple websites that have exactly the same content. So I've called kiddos out and I said, this is the site you use. And they go, no, it's not. I've never been there before, and I can prove it. Look, check my browser history. Well, Turnitin also provides other websites that have that same content. And I go down the list and like, how about this one? And how about this one? Oh, yeah, that's what I used. Okay. So especially when students sell their essays, they will usually use more than one website. If a student turned in their assignment in whole or part in elsewhere, with GABS or with another school that uses Turnitin, I can usually determine that. I've had a situation where a kiddo turned in an essay that he had written for his private school that also used Turnitin, thinking that he could save himself some time. In fact, I think his mom told him to do it. It's like, hey, this is the same concept, right? Just turn in the same essay. It's yours, right? No, we require fresh work every time, and that is actually pretty typical. I tried to turn an essay in for 2 separate classes in college. I asked permission first, and I was told no. Um, so that was really disappointing, but that's fairly standard. You have to write fresh work for every class every semester. If you turned in someone else's work, either from GAVS or another school that uses Turnitin, or if you got that essay from the internet and turned it in as your own, that would be we would be able to determine that as well. We can also work together we can also find out if students who work together on an assignment, even if this other student has a different teacher in GAVS. So Turnitin has this awesome little doohickey where we can request from the other teacher information about the student that wrote the original document. And if it's a GAVS teacher, we always come together and we always discuss and we always, figure out what's going on with that. I believe it was last summer, or might have been the fall semester, but it was fairly recent, within the last year to year and a half. I had a student who submitted, and this was on more than one occasion, but the one that made me like most incredulous was she submitted an essay and I recognized the source. I knew it was Turnitin pulled it up as plagiarized immediately. And I looked at the source and I was like, I know that student. And I did a little hunting. I did a little hunting on the internet and I found the website that this child had used to get multiple assignments. And not only did it make me incredibly angry to see all these students, putting their work out there for other students to use. Um, the student whose source she had used for this particular essay had been one of my students several years ago. So student A wrote an essay, got a good grade on it, was like, hey, I can make some money off of this, sold it on the internet. And then student B picked it up and tried to turn it into me, not realizing that student A had submitted that essay to me. So I had graded that essay the first time. That was probably one of my most like strange and coincidental stories. But yeah, that happened. It was really sobering to find this website and see the names of teachers that were either me or someone else that I knew. Um, it's kind of been me and one other teacher that predominantly teaches this course during the summer. So a lot of students have been through us, and I saw our name on multiple assignments, and it was infuriating, basically. All right, I can also usually find out if you have plagiarized your image as well. This comes into play for the yellow wallpaper assignment. I can find out if somebody has stolen their image by using a website called Tin Eye. Even if you put that image in another document, I have ways of pulling it out of that document and then submitting it to Tin Eye to see if you really created that image. Um, I recognize the fact that there are a lot of high school artists that are very accomplished and very skilled and can do some really amazing work. But if it's amazing work that maybe seems too amazing, I would probably check it. And I have come up with several that have been plagiarized. Okay. You might be thinking, well, maybe I can just get away with it. At Georgia Virtual School, a teacher can enable to turn it in on any Dropbox assignment, even the ones that maybe seem like nobody would ever want to copy that because it's, too easy. Like, why would I do that? Um, for non-Dropbox assignments, like discussion posts, I actually checked one this morning. It ended up being original. But on a discussion post, I've been doing this a long time. Okay. I've been teaching now since I've been licensed since 2010. So that's 11 years. My first instance of catching cheating, um, we didn't have Turnitin at that school. I caught it because I was like, this kid didn't write this. And I was right. I found the original source really quick with Google. On discussion posts, I do catch most of it. I do catch a lot of it. I get to know particular students and their abilities and their writing styles. And if something doesn't match their writing style, then I would check it. Not to be crass, but if a student doesn't write very well and then all of a sudden turns in an assignment that's written extremely well, I would check it. I would check it. If it's unlike an assignment that you've submitted before, I would get suspicious. Or the other way around, if you're typically a really good writer and you just had a really bad week and you think that you don't have time to get this work done and you just turn in something that you found, um, and it's not very good, I might check that too. I'm going to skip this because this doesn't count anymore. This is from when we were using Brightspace, but now we're using Canvas. Um, Somewhat similarly, I do want to show you this color-coded box. This being in blue here indicates that there is no issue with this essay, that this is probably a normal, that 16% is probably just well done, proper quotes from the essay. I do want to bring up, however, that in Canvas, student students don't always catch this, and it's really unfortunate, but especially on rough drafts, I am able to write right on their document. I'm able to highlight things. I'm able to cross things out. I'm able to um, put suggestions and comments directly on their document. But you actually have to click on view feedback for that to show up. And in order to get the turn it in report, you have to click the little color coded percentage box. That's the same in Canvas as well. So just be super duper aware that you do need to click view feedback in Canvas in order to see the stuff that I've written on the essay. I had a student last year who was an excellent writer and was really interested in improving her skills and wanted to make sure that she saw and used all of my comments. And after a couple essays, she was very frustrated that she didn't seem to be getting better. And then we finally realized together, I was referring to a specific point that I had made written on her essay. And she did not realize that she had to click view feedback in order to see what I've written on the essay itself. And she was so frustrated and so annoyed with herself that she had missed that. And she asked permission to go back and like use what I had written on her essays to improve them. And I gave her permission because it was, I understood. Since that point, I have made a special point of making sure, and as much as I can remember, I remind students in their written feedback to click view feedback so that you see what was actually written on the document itself. The following examples are true. Names have been changed to protect the privacy of the guilty. They are not currently taking any of my classes, so fear not, you will not see your work. So let's look at some examples. This is one of my favorite parts of this class. This one here, 69%. 69%. Now, the most likely situation is that most of this was taken from one document, but it's possible it could have been a few. But you can see that there's just a lot. You can see down here, this pink mark right here. This is properly quoted. We got a proper quote there. However, it's not used correctly. It's its own sentence. You should never do that. You should always integrate it into its own sentence. I will have a class on that very soon. But then like this here, had this been the only thing in an essay, this little list here, I wouldn't have called that out. That's not really a problem. But this is bad. This is an entire sentence. Okay. So this is probably a research essay in relation to Martin Luther King. That was just poorly done. The research was not interpreted. Okay. This is just issues. This essay was a situation where the kiddo resubmitted their own paper with only teeny tiny changes. Maybe changed the title and a couple of the words and submitted it again. If I remember correctly, this was the student's own essay. So as you can see, Turnitin pulled it up immediately as wholly plagiarized, the whole thing, 97%. That's super duper extra high. There's not a chance that the student wrote even a single thing in this essay. This one was an example of collusion. This is the one where the student worked together with another student and one of them submitted the work. They both submitted the work to two different teachers. Okay, so you can see here the submission source here submitted to Georgia Virtual School. You can't see this right now in this image, but if I were to click on that little submitted to Georgia Virtual School, it would give me an option to email the teacher of the original assignment. If it's submitted to a school, I can usually email that teacher requesting access to the original document so we can figure out who that has been giving out their work. So that one time that I was suspicious that the student had used an assignment that I knew, I emailed the teacher that was the teacher of the original student, and I got the email myself. I emailed myself. So this one here was a situation where the two girls used the same assignment, and we figured it out. This would be an example of what something would turn up as in with using tin eye. Now I know 100% that this image, of course, is plagiarized. I just wanted to use an image I knew would come up. So I submitted this image. I took this image, I submitted it, and I came up with 1,454 results. That means that the student just Googled it. However, there are ways to prevent plagiarism. There are 7 ways, according to plagiarism.com. Always consult your instructor. If you're not sure if something would be counted as plagiarism, ask. Giving yourself proper time to plan your essay and to do a good job on it will help you avoid the temptation to plagiarize. If you take good notes in classes, provide yourself with enough material to actually get good information and write well, that helps too. If you're not sure if you should cite something or not, cite it. Okay, for example, images, always cite images that you get from the internet, always. For example, in the literary terms project, I mark kiddos down all the time, sometimes as much as 10% for not providing citations for the images. Kids forget about that. Students forget about the images. If you didn't make the image, you're stealing it, but putting it in your assignment with no citation. Make it clear who said what. Know how to paraphrase. This is what I was talking about. Read it, digest it, and put it in your own words. Don't just spit it back out. Analyze and evaluate your sources. Make sure you're using good sources. Don't use Wikipedia. Don't use SparkNotes. You can use those to give you a good start and to then guide your research into something more specific, a more strong source, but you should not quote sites like Wikipedia or SparkNotes or anything like that because a lot of times, because they're summary sites, okay? Instead of pulling a quote from a summary site, pull a quote from the actual text. That would be better. I have students that will use quote websites in order to help, if maybe they didn't actually read the book. They use summary sites and quote sites together and put together an essay, and you can tell they didn't read the book because they make mistakes. All right, so Turnitin is capable of recognizing common phrases, and does that mark them as an unoriginal? So, for example, if you use a common phrase or a common slang phrase in your essays, for example, a piece of cake or something like that, Turnitin wouldn't mark it as plagiarism, even though you certainly didn't come up with that expression. And it's as old as time itself. It's not going to mark that as plagiarized because it's extremely common. You shouldn't use common phrases like that in your essay because that's not the mark of a good writer. But if you're writing something like your not environment, the one where you actually write a story using your senses, then that would be different. I also know how to read a Turnitin report. I can usually tell if a student is intentionally or accidentally using other information. I can usually tell the difference. Usually poor accidental plagiarism is due to poor paraphrasing. So read your source, set it aside, and write from your head. Be sure to go back and reread your source to make sure you didn't accidentally quote a memorized section. That has happened. Whether it was done accidentally or not, and the student just claimed it was an accident, I'm not entirely certain, but that's one of the things that kiddos do claim a lot. It's like, oh, I just happened to memorize it. Well, yeah, sure, that happens, but that's not proper paraphrasing. All right, so what happens? What are the consequences? So in that plagiarism discussion, a lot of students ask, what are the consequences? Well, let's talk about it. They're for real. Since our policies on plagiarism and academic honesty are clearly spelled out in the handbook, and we expect all students and parents to read the handbook as well as complete the handbook acknowledgement form at the beginning of the school year, plagiarism offenses are also handled according to the handbook. The discipline levels are level 1, level 2, and level 3. For level 1, you will receive an official warning email from the teacher that is logged in the student information system. Students and parents should reply to the email to confirm receipt. Teacher may follow up with a phone call if they do not receive a reply. So this is something that I've had to be very careful with because I have done academic dishonesty emails before, and they were going to the wrong email for the parent or something like that. And the second time the student plagiarized, I got in trouble for not making sure that the parents knew that there was plagiarism. I mean, this is a high schooler. There should be no good reason for a high schooler to be plagiarizing, but apparently I was the one that was wrong because I didn't tell the mom. Um, but they still supported the decision. But anyways, um, so I do try to follow up on those plagiarism content. Now, if you were to go out and do it again, you would still receive the parent warning email, probably the exact same email. And I will also contact an administrator, specifically Dr. Yisrael. Dr. Yisrael is the ELA department head. She's the one that handles all of the discipline for the ELA classes. She will contact your school, and request discipline, such as ISS. Obviously, over the summer, that doesn't happen the same way, but she might contact your parents and request, some serious consequences or some serious conversation, that kind of thing. We have had students put in, like, detention and stuff before because of plagiarism and contacting their school. Even after that, if you plagiarize a third time, and yes, this has happened, admin may actually make the decision to remove you from GAVs and not allow you back in. Okay? And this is, of course, intentional plagiarism. Accidental plagiarism, as I said, I can typically tell the difference. Don't think that you're accidentally going to plagiarize and accidentally get kicked out of GAVs. That's not the way it works, okay? I can usually tell the difference. There is such a thing as intentional. You do it intentionally, you will intentionally get kicked out. All right, so maybe you got caught plagiarizing. What are you going to do now? You'll receive the aforementioned email. You and your parent and guardian should reply to the aforementioned email. You should do your best to learn about your mistake and prevent it in the future. If it is your first offense, I might let you redo the essay. Another thing that I'll do, if you plagiarize on your rough draft, but you give me an entirely fresh final draft, I will not allow you the opportunity to receive rough draft comments, like, in order to improve. But I will take the grade that you earned on your fresh final draft and put it in for your rough draft instead of a 0. So, for example, if you turn in an essay and it's a mess with plagiarism, so I give you a 0 and I say, nope, don't do that. You get the email, blah, blah, blah. For your final draft, you write a fresh essay and it gets an 85. I'll give you an 85 on that final draft. No, you don't get to edit anymore. You lost that privilege when you turned in an essay that wasn't yours. And then I would take that 85 and put it in for your rough draft, just to kind of reward you for doing the right thing now. However, this is not GAV's policy. This is something we are allowed to do, but it's not GAV's policy. There are some teachers out there that do not allow any kind of redo for plagiarism. And I can support that. That's what they choose to do in their classes, and I support that. That's not what I choose to do in my class. So don't expect that out of every teacher. So don't expect that you can, get your one offense and redo it. No, just don't do it at all. These are some great resources if you want to try to snag these, or at least go to the general resource. Owl at Purdue here is one of my favorite websites when it comes to writing essays as well as citation. This first one here is about MLA sourcing, MLA formatting. Yes, all document assignments turned into GAVs need to be an MLA. This second one here is for help with paraphrasing. This is one of the first. I will probably have this class next Monday. Integrating quotes. It's usually one of my first classes, so that's probably what I'm going to do next week, is integrating quotes properly into sentences in your essay. Plagiarism.org is a great source for learning about what plagiarism is. Also, I would recommend don't be afraid to use a citation generator or citation machine. Just be sure all formatting matches and highlighting is removed. Also, make sure the generator is using the most recent version of MLA, MLA 8. There are changes that are made every couple of years, especially in regards to most sources being available online now and citing online sources better. You used to have to put in the whole website into your citation. You don't have to do that anymore. Excuse me, hold on. I apologize. I have a cold and I didn't think anybody wanted to hear me sneeze. So a citation generator is a great option because it reduces the chances of mistakes in your actual citations. So what you can do with the citation generator is take the website that you used, pop it into the generator, and it will churn out the correct citation. EasyBib, EasyBib is one option for that. I have students use it all the time. However, make sure your formatting matches and your highlighting is removed. And what I mean by that is EasyBib will not necessarily put the citation in the same font that you're using, like Times New Roman, and it will often have highlighting on it, and you need to make sure to take that off so that it matches, the rest of your essay. Okay, this is my Survey Monkey. Let me see if I can snag this link. I don't think I can get that link. I mean, hold on, let me turn that off. Oh, yeah, it does work. I'm gonna put that in the chat. Okay, you can get 10% back on your lowest project grade by completing that survey. It's like a little quiz. All right, little fun fact here that this image is not technically plagiarized, even though I didn't give a citation, because it's from Pixabay, which is a source for images released under Creative Commons, meaning you don't need to cite the source. And there's my dishonest image that is slammed all over the honesty issues. All right, so I can't stress this enough, but if you have a question, it's best to ask. If you think you're not sure that you should use a particular source, or if you don't know how to properly cite a certain thing, first of all, try Google. Okay, students ask me all the time, how do I properly cite images? If you just go to Google and go MLA image citation, it will come up with like 27 different resources to help you out. And that's pretty much all I'm going to do too, is give you a website. Okay, I don't know how to do it. Like, I don't know how to write a citation off the top of my head, especially for an image. Like, do this, do this, do this, do this. I mean, I know how to identify correct citations, but I couldn't tell you how to do it off the top of my head, especially because images come from so many different sources. So I honestly would Google it and give you a good source. All right, so go ahead and take advantage of that survey. I will check it periodically and give you 10% back on your lowest project grade. I could use a test grade, for example, too. I'll give you 10% back on assignments on either a test or a project because they're worth about the same anyways. And let me know if you have any questions. Okay, like I said, I've said, and I've try to make it very clear before. Texting me is the best way to get a hold of me. So if you have any questions, let me know. All right, do you have any questions? The one student here? If not, you are free to skedaddle, and I appreciate your attendance. You're very welcome. Have a great day. My next class will be Monday at 1:30 p.m.